Hello and welcome in the Sam and Cole podcast as we get ready for the final preseason game of 2014. What do you got? Corn nuts you're working on there?
Man,
What you got there?
Is that the loudest thing you ever heard?
Yeah, way to go, way to start off the pod. Presented by Black Creek Outfitters, by the way, who I do not believe sell corn nuts, but
and planters.
they do have, I think, some trail foods available if you can do some hiking or camping, but and everything else for the outdoors, of course. Right there by the town center, a great Jacksonville business, family owned, and really full of experts in the outdoors. A great place to stop by. We're happy to have them sponsor the podcast. As we were starting this thing off, I was thinking, well, let's talk about something other than the quarterback when we talk about the Jaguars.
Right.
But it's hard to talk about something else. Even though there are other things to consider, there are other position battles, and we can talk about the wide receivers and how that all fits out, and Nate Sanders popping back for a bit and what that looks like, or the offensive line struggles and who goes where. But, gosh, the quarterback position just absolutely dominates the conversation, and I don't remember the quarterback conversation being as dominant in conversations that I'm having walking around town since the whole Leftwich versus Garrard quarterback battle.
And I'll tell you why, though. One of the reasons why is that, and I will give my wife credit for this, as she's a casual fan, she watches. And she said, Bortles gives you hope. And that hasn't been around here for a long time. Nobody had any confidence in Gabbert. They knew that the ceiling that Garrard had. They never had any confidence in Byron Leftwich. And so when you look at the team for the last 10 years, you go, oh, Bortles gives you hope.
Yeah, but there was hope. I will say this. She's right, but there was hope with Leftwich. There was hope with Gabbert. And at this point in their careers, there was hope with both of them. So now, I'm seeing a lot better things out of Bortles right now than I saw out of those two at this point of their career. But and hope is what sells tickets and gets people excited more than anything. There's no doubt about that. But it is partly because of that, and the fact that he has shown what he has shown to this point, that he's done better and more than the other guys have at this point in their careers. And I don't think there are too many fans, members of the media, analysts, who right now think that they're doing the right thing by having Chad Henne start at quarterback. Maybe you could say, well, okay, for the opener, the first couple of games, fine. But by and large, everybody sees what I think I see. Well, and I know I see what I think you see, which is Bortles has it. So put him in there, let him start learning so he can start using it.
Well, I'll tell you this. The best thing Gus said after the game against Detroit was the game is not too big for Blake.
Yeah.
And that's a fascinating way of kind of putting it. That, the guy goes in, and I said to him, did it occur to you with 1:48 left in the first half, you were coming in the game for the first time with the first team, and your first pass was going to be 5 yards deep in your own end zone? And he said, no, actually, I just go out there and play football. And the game isn't too big for him, and nothing really flusters him. And we talked about his college career with George O'Leary and how certainly O'Leary has given him that base that you need when you get to this. But I don't think you can coach this. If you did, you'd have coached it into Blaine Gabbert. That certain amount of confidence and moxie and not rattled situation that Bortles has. Now, so the question that is hanging out there is, why isn't he starting? They see something that we don't see in terms of Bortles getting there when it counts. And they really believe this, that Chad Henne gives them the best chance to win. Now, there are a lot of things that happen at the line of scrimmage. There are a lot of things that happen once the regular season starts. And if they go, and we've talked about those first 5 games and how difficult they are, if they go 1-4, then I think you start considering, maybe we should put Bortles in the game. But they win 2 of those first 5 games because Chad Henne plays well enough for them to win. and he's giving them a better chance, as good a chance to win, then they're going to leave him in there.
You know, you say that, and the comments that I've heard about Bortles is that he doesn't have as good a grasp as Henne of the protection schemes.
Right.
Probably true.
Right.
He doesn't have as good a grasp of the running game. Who cares? All he has to do is hand it off in one direction or another. That's one of the lamest things I've ever heard to talk. It's one thing if you say a running back, like I remember when Maurice Drew, no, I take it back, it was Fred Taylor as a rookie, and Coughlin is saying, well, he doesn't understand the protection schemes right now.
Right.
Then just give it to him, hand it off to him, and let him run. I was like, well, we see this. And it took, by the way, it took like 3 games to give it to Fred. And by the time they got to the regular season, they were, okay, yeah, here you go. I understand protections, and if Brad Meester plays one more year, Blake doesn't need to know anything about the protection schemes because Meester's the guy who's getting them into it. And maybe that's part of it, that you have Henne, you feel better about Henne getting the offensive line into the right places rather than Jacques McClendon or Mike Brewster. Or,
by the way, I can give you a little inside baseball on there. That right now, Henne is making all the calls. Yeah. There are no calls being made on the offensive line.
Yeah, well, that makes sense to me, considering the inexperience of those guys up there and poor play also, quite frankly. Yeah. Because they don't know who the center is at this point. Maybe it's going to be no one.
Maybe I don't worry about it that much with the quarterback position because I have such low expectations for the Jaguars this year in terms of.
Are they as low as ESPN the magazine that hasn't picked to lose their first 8 games, by the way, and finish 4-12?
Again? Did they really?
They have. I was just looking at it. They have to lose the first 8 and tie with Oakland for the worst record in the NFL. That's ESPN the magazine's prediction.
Huh. Well, I guess they know better than Chris Clemens and Ziggy Hood and the guys that they signed on defense because when you start looking at the Jaguars defense and you start breaking it down where they spent their money, who's in there too deep, and this hasn't happened in a long time. In there too deep, the Jaguars have 1 rookie. And by the way, he's played great in the preseason. That's Telvin Smith. Mm-hmm. Everybody else is an experienced player. And everybody else, and if Dakota Watson comes along here in the next 2 weeks and is able to play half the game or whatever they hope to, rotate in there with the rest of those guys who can rush the passer as well as cover. This defense, they're going to hang their hat on this defense all year long. We're focused on the quarterbacks and the center. The defense is where they spent their money because they know that you can get players who are still productive. Even a guy like Chris Clemens, 11 years in the league, is still making things happen for the few number of plays that they're asking him to be in there.
To that point, does it concern you that they really haven't gotten any kind of pressure on the quarterback the last 2 weeks in the preseason?
Well, no, because they really haven't. In talking to Bob Babich and then talking to Paul Puslesny in Detroit, they haven't done anything scheme-wise. They've played a very base kind of vanilla defense. They really don't want to show anything until the season starts. And remember, they open against the Eagles, who looked like world beaters the other night against the Steelers. Looked like they could score 1 million points, which, by the way, Vegas thinks they will against the Jaguars. The over-under is 42, and the Jaguars aren't going to score 20 points. So, they think the Jaguars are going to get beat in that game, or the public perception is, 35-10.
Yeah. Well, which would not be the most outrageous thing considering, where the Jaguars are going to get points from. And, again, offensive line questions. And, by the way, I spent a fair amount of time watching Luke Jokel against Detroit because I wanted to see how he was coming along.
Right.
He's not Tony Baselli yet.
Not great, no. I agree with that.
And Beatles, okay. The rest of that line, and you've got a receiving core that, and I'm going to use this example knowing that Justin Blackman really isn't in the receiving core, but he's a receiver still under contract to the Jaguars. You've got suspended, can't stay healthy, rookie, undrafted rookie. Those are your top 6 receivers right now.
Okay, so let Let me name those guys.
Yeah.
Suspended Blackman.
Yep.
Suspended Ace Sanders.
Yep.
Can't stay healthy, Cecil Shorts.
Yep.
Can't stay healthy, Allen Robinson.
Yep.
Marquise Lee drafted.
Yep.
Allen Hurns.
Yep.
Undrafted. And by the way,
and the next one is probably former college quarterback.
Who's that?
Mike Brown.
Mike Brown. Yeah. Well, that's true. Okay, so I totally agree with all that, and they're hoping a lot of those guys are ready to play week 1. I don't know that solves any of their problems, but I do think it's funny with all the millions of dollars and things that happen with draft picks, and everybody says, how did Allen Hurns not get drafted? Yeah. Well, by the way, the Jaguars passed on him 7 times too. What did they think? They knew for sure he was going to be there as a free agent? Of course not.
And by the way, I will just point out, there is a long and illustrious history of receivers looking very good in the preseason, Chad Owens, and never really turning into much, Cortez Hankton. So, let's see how Hurns does in the regular season. I like what he's done so far, but let's see what he does.
Agreed. He does not have the problem with that he's too short or has bad hands or all that. I guess his issue was straight line speed. And if you don't run a measurable 4.3 something or 4.4 something, they don't even look at you. And there's a history of wide receivers who have made it, who are not high draft picks. I mean, look at a guy like Marcus Colston, who was drafted in the last round, and every team in the league would love to have had that guy.
And runs about a 6.3.
Right, and he's not fast.
Yeah,
but certainly very productive. So, you're right. The quarterback position is the question, and you only, as a fan, I think, have to decide whether you're trusting what Gus and Dave are doing or you don't. And the offensive line, the left side is set, and you hope that Jokel progresses, continues to get better. I think you talked about that slow, steady, get better curve on the offensive line. I don't think that they are, Brandon Lindner is going to be the right guard. That's going to happen. And they got to decide whether Mike Brewster is on this team or a starter. And because he can play guard, which he did last week, that helps him a bit. But I don't think they're going to put Linder and Bowanko in the game at the same time.
It does tell you something that they put Brewster at right guard, and he had never practiced there before.
Right. Yeah. And they said, get in the game.
They said, okay, go. Yeah, because they're trying to find a way. How do you fit him in there?
Right. Or they're also showing him off potentially as a trade guy. Or I agree, but you're also going to.
Of course, I didn't think they'd get anything for Blaine Gabbert, and they got a 6th-round pick.
6th-round pick. That's unbelievable.
Sucker born every minute.
Yeah.
All right. So what are you going to be looking for in the final game?
Who's playing? I don't even know who's playing. I'm doing the play-by-play for the game. I don't even know who's playing.
It's the Jaguars and the Falcons, Sam.
That's about as much as I know. But you tell me that Matt Ryan's going to play in this game? He isn't playing in this game.
Yeah.
Is Chad Henne playing? Is Blaine Bortles playing? Or is this a Ricky Stanzi, Stephen Morris game? You really going to put Toby Gerhard in there after seeing last week what he's capable of doing with 10 carries?
What does he have to prove at this point?
Right. That's what I'm saying. So I guess I'll look for some coordination on the offensive line. I'll look for the defense. And Tony Baselli did tell me something interesting during the game broadcast. He said it was always harder for him to play a measured number of plays because then you start counting. Mm-hmm. Is this 6 or 7? Is this 10 or 12? And he said, he'd rather go out and just try to compete the whole game.
And here's the comparison for those of you who go to the gym. If you go there and you say, you start, I'm going to do 20 reps of this thing. You're counting. Whereas if you were just to go out there and say, I'm going to do this for a while, it would feel completely different. All right, completely different. A bunch of these, okay, and then.
Yeah. So I don't think you learn much in the 4th preseason game. You learn.
Sam, it is the most worthless on-field thing that happens in major sports.
And it has progressed to that. It used to not be, but it has progressed to that. Now, the one thing that does happen in the fourth preseason game is that teams gauge their depth. And if you look at what has happened to the Jaguars in the first 3 games, you can see that their first and second teamers are fairly competitive and kind of play there. But as soon as they go to that next level of player, those guys get run over. And that's where the Jaguars are lacking. And you hope some guys make this team as special teamers who, if they're not playing for the Jaguars, aren't driving a truck. You hope that guys who don't make this team have a chance to catch on elsewhere, because that means the special teamers and the third and fourth string guys that you kept can actually play or develop into something.
Do you think there's actually some tough decisions to be made here? Are there some guys who are really on the bubble who can save themselves with a good game or lose it with a bad? I mean, they can lose it with a bad game, but save themselves with a good game. I think because what you said, that the third teamer has just not looked, and some of the second teamers have not looked particularly good. I think it's a pretty easy cut to 53 coming.
Yeah, I do too, and I also think that it's not necessarily that the 53 guys that the Jaguars decide to cut down on their roster are the ones that are going to be here, because they're looking at the other 31 teams, and where they are in that complete second level of player, there are players out there that are going to be released that the Jaguars are going to take. Having said that, I'm looking at the Lions roster. They got Rasheen, C.J. Mosley, Don Carey. They had a half dozen
Don
guys.
Cherry, not right. No, Don Carey, not Don Cherry, the announcer.
Not John Cherry, okay. Don Carey.
Yep. Okay, good. And not Duran Cherry.
Montel Owens.
Yep.
I mean, they got guys who are still playing in the league, and the Lions are supposed to be competitive.
And by the way, one of the favorite things to do is for people to say, yeah, boy, how terrible the Jaguars were. Obviously, they were the record. Look at all the guys who aren't on the team anymore. Well, a lot of those guys are on other teams, so maybe terrible, maybe not in some regards. All right, we'll talk a little bit about college football, and we'll after the game Thursday, we'll also, of course, give you a wrap-up of the preseason and look ahead. But also high school football basically starts on Friday.
Everybody had their jamboree last week, yeah.
And Trinity Christian played a game on TV that for the team that is supposed to, was heralded as the dominant team, 6 of the top 300 players in the nation, and they get shut out.
And didn't score. First time since sometime in the mid-'90s.
Yeah.
They haven't scored.
Either Buford, Georgia is dominant, or we'll see how it all works out. But I'll be doing the Bulls broadcast again this year. I'll be keeping a close eye on what happens there. Great. So they've got it. They twice back-to-back years go into the state championship game, and
I'm not that overly concerned about Trinity, because I know Verlin Dormany runs a real program over there.
Oh yeah,
and I mean he's got he creates a team, and while he does have some stars. And maybe those guys, the young guys that read the press clippings, he will figure that out, and they will be a contender at the end of the year. I really believe that.
I mean, and they've got a lot of talent, particularly on defense, a lot of talent over there. And between them and First Coast, they dominated the Super 11 that came out for the Times Union. One of the guys to watch this year, of course, in high school football in the area, not only because he's a terrific player, but because of his name and who his father is Dexter Carter Jr. at Bulls, who will be a senior this year. He had 35 touchdowns last year combined, and so he'll be one to keep an eye on. We'll mention some of that as we go along.
By the way, if you want a little
great year in the area, though.
Yeah, if you want a pretty good primer, I forget which issue it was, but Florida was featured in one of the inside stories in Sports Illustrated. And, when you're 4-8, as Will Muschamp has said over and over and over, you don't really have a lot of rights. And I thought it gave a pretty good, very good foundation for what the expectations should be this year. And with a new offensive coordinator, with a completely different offensive scheme that fits Jeff Driscoll better, that fits the kind of player that was recruited better. And in addition to that,
wait, do you think it does though? If it's this is an honest question. If this offense fits the players that have been recruited better, then why in the world were they recruiting those guys who are running the other offense?
No, I mean the guys recruited before them. So you're saying that I'm saying that there's still some guys hanging around that were recruited to run this kind of spread, more mobile offense. And I think some of it has, at least according to that article, and I haven't been down there to talk to him, but there's a giant dose of humble pie for Will Muschamp, who was the guy who said when they beat Texas A&M the first time there as a coach, he said, "Boy, it's great to come here and disappoint all these people." And then he said later, people are going to have to get used to this Florida power football. And he realized that you can't win consistently like that.
Unless you're Alabama.
Unless you're Alabama. That's exactly what I was going to say. And you have
all the big horses.
Right. That's right.
I'm going to say this. I don't think it's going to end well this year.
No.
I don't think you can. I've seen too many desperation moves by coaches where they change everything, except for you can't change the entire roster. And if you've recruited to a certain type of player, whether it fits Jeff Driscoll better or not, maybe. But all these other guys where you were trying to play power football, smash mouth football, and now you're going to try to play speed football, which makes perfect sense, by the way, to play that in the state of Florida with all the athletes. I just don't think it's going to end well, and I think it's going to be another one of those situations where it's, a coach tries desperately to keep his head above water, but, he's grabbing onto what he thinks is a life raft, and it turns out it's an anchor.
Tell me how many wins Will Muschamp has to have to keep his job.
I think 8 if they are if some of them are the right 8.
Yeah, well, they're not beating Alabama.
So 8 if one of them is Georgia.
Okay.
And if one of them is South Carolina.
Okay.
Because you get 2 good feel-good wins.
Mm-hmm.
And
you're not beating Florida State. You're not beating Alabama.
No.
Okay.
And they are beating Idaho, and they are beating
Eastern Kentucky,
Eastern Michigan,
and
South Central, whoever, right. They'll be fine. And I don't think Georgia Southern is on the schedule again this year.
Yeah, they told them not to come back.
Yeah.
They gave them their $600,000 and told them to go home.
I will also take $600,000 to go home. Just as an editorial for anybody who's out there.
That's right.
I definitely will. All right. You get Mark Brunell back in the booth on Thursday, do you not?
On Thursday, we do, and we'll have a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun with Tony Baselli, too. It was really, really enjoyable. And it's fun to talk with guys that I've known for 20 years and who I know the game, and as a broadcaster. It's nice when they respect your knowledge of the game as well, and we've had that good give and take, and I've really enjoyed that. By the way, Orioles in first, 1979 revisited.
And the Royals didn't wind up winning in '79. They fell out, if you'll remember. But it does feel good. I may have to. And Billy Butler on the cover of the Regional Sports Illustrated.
That's right.
But bumped off the national cover by in a lot of places by Monet
Davis.
Money.
Yeah, right.
Davis of the Philadelphia Little League team. So just never
fun.
Respect your.
All right. That's the Sam and Cole podcast presented by Black Creek Outfitters. Stop by and see anybody with a Butler family or anybody, as I've said many times, if you walk in the front door, somebody will say, "Can I help you?" And they've got everything. As the weather's not going to change here for a while. We like to think it's going to change September 1 next Monday. It's not going to change. It's not going to change for another month or so. But whatever the needs are, and no doubt as the weather does start to change, they will have plenty of big sales. So stop by Black Creek Outfitters at the Town Center. Follow Cole on Twitter at Cole Pepper, and you can follow me in a variety of places at Sam Kavaris, at Sam Sportsline, at Sports4Jacks. And we will see you next time on the Sam and Cole podcast.